call to order the, I guess this will be the 8th meeting of the Fall River Task Force. We are in City Council Chamber. It's Thursday, August 8th at 10:08 a.m. And first order of business is to read, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We'll have roll call of members.
Okay, Kevin Aguirre, Judith Conrad, I'm here. Carl Hitzler, Mike Quinn, not yet here. Gloria Sadler,
Present.
Kathy Viveras. Chairman Camara,
Here.
here.
Mr. Quinn is on his way. I said he would be a few minutes late. Mr. Aguirre and Mr. Hessler had other commitments, but suggested we proceed. Citizen input, we have no input today. However, throughout the meeting, if anyone comes, they have an opportunity to provide input. At our last meeting, we went through the bulk of the proposed ordinance. We went through pages 1 through 28. I have provided you all with the revised draft, which is available to the public or to anyone else who wants a copy of it. If anyone arrives today, we have extra copies. And they are properly paginated. So when we get to the revised draft, we'll be able to refer to them by page number. And I want to thank the IT
Information
department,
technology.
particularly Mike, who really provided me with a lot of support in getting this done. Okay, just to update what we have been doing over the last 7 meetings and 7 months, and this now in the 8th month of doing work, is we've been going through the city's original charter, looking specifically to the issue of mayor versus city manager. We've opted not to go beyond that scope. There was some interest in going beyond that scope, possibly to look at the recall issue, possibly to look at the elected officials being also an appointed official. It was decided that that was not within the scope of the task force. Our scope was exclusively the issue of city manager versus mayor form of government. And we've met with various city managers. We've also visited, some of us, Cambridge, where we discussed with various leaders in the Cambridge community about the success and challenges that exist with a city manager form of government. But I think we're ready to proceed now to go through the rest of the proposals. And I would like to begin, I guess, basically by using the old working document to address the changes that were made, so that you can see the changes, and we'll look at them in the revised draft. And they're actually easy to look at because they're not only underlined, they're also bold. So I'm not going to go through every page and reread the changes, because those changes we went through last time, and if they're underlined and not bold, they were approved as okay. So the first bold is on page 8, and this is the issue of what if both mayor and deputy mayor removed from their positions at the same time. So you'll see the language that was created there. I can read it for the sake of the public, that might want to know what it says. It says, if both mayor and deputy mayor removed from their positions at the same time or at a time prior to action taken as specified within the prior paragraph of section 2-2A, the remaining 7 members of the city council shall have added to its membership 2 additional city councilors, being filled in descending order of votes received by the 2 candidates for the office of city councilor at the preceding city election who received the highest number. of votes without being elected, provided such candidate remains eligible and willing to serve. The city clerk shall certify this candidate for the office of city council, and the candidate shall be sworn to office immediately to serve for the balance of the unexpired term. City councilors serving under this section shall not be entitled to have the words candidate for re-election printed with that councilor's name on the election ballot. After the 2 additional members of the city council are sworn to office, the city clerk shall convene immediately or as soon as is possible to elect from the city council's membership an interim leadership team who would serve until the next regular city election as mayor and deputy mayor, carrying out all powers and duties as specified in this section 2-2B. This convened city council meeting shall be called without delay by the city clerk and shall be chaired by the city clerk until the election of an interim leadership team. The city clerk shall have no vote during this convened city council meeting. So that's the language that we were directed to do at the last meeting. Is it satisfactory to everyone?
Yes.
All right, so I don't think we need votes on this. We'll just assume that if there's a vote needed to change it, we'll change it. Otherwise, we'll keep it as is. Okay, so the next bold printed item is on page 18, and it really just is a reiteration of what we just said. It just reads, if both mayor and deputy mayor are removed from their position at the same time or at a time prior to action taken as specified within section 2-2A, the replacement shall be as provided for in section 2-2A. Okay, and then the executive branch, a little bit of a change, and this was a motion made last time that we use, that we provide a prohibition for a city manager to serve in some other capacity, possibly in his or her own town, if he was asked to serve on a board. So the original language prohibited that. This language now adds the proviso that provided, however, that this prohibition may be waived by a 2/3 vote, a minimum of 6 votes is required of the city council. The city manager shall be sworn to the faithful performance of the duties of city manager and shall be the chief administrative officer of the city and shall be responsible for the administration of all departments, commissions, boards. Here we go. Just give it like that. We're on page 15.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Michael Quinn, a 5th member of our committee, has arrived. Office of City, whether established before its adoption of this plan or thereafter, except that of the city clerk, city auditor. Okay, so this is, since I interrupted myself in the middle of a sentence, I'll try to get back. So this makes note of the fact that the council would, under this new amended charter, that would be the appointing authority of the city clerk, city auditor, city corporation councilor, and any, oh, I'm sorry. Let me get back to that sentence prior. The city, on page 14, the city manager shall be sworn to the faithful performance of the duties of city manager and shall be the chief administrative officer of the city and shall be responsible for the administration of all departments, commissions, boards, and offices of the city, whether established before its adoption of this plan or thereafter, except that of the city clerk, city auditor, city corporation council, and any official appointed by the governor or anybody elected by the voters of the city. The city manager shall be appointed on the basis of administrative and executive qualifications only and need not be a resident of the city or commonwealth when appointed. The city manager shall hold office per contract with the city council and shall receive such compensation as shall be established by contract and or by ordinance. So, just to bring Mr. Quinn up to date, what we're going through now are the changes that the committee made at its last meeting on the draft, so we're only looking at the bolded print changes. Everything else was approved at a previous meeting, so we're just going through this. And the paragraph we just read was a combination, I believe, of, in fact, Ms. Conrad's raising of some language that we lifted, if you will, from Cambridge to describe the city manager's shall be sworn to the faithful performance of the duties of city manager. That comes from the Cambridge language, just to have some description. Obviously, a job description would be more extensive than this, but this is just a general description of a city manager's duties. So is there any objection or concern on that paragraph I just read? Do we proceed? Proceed, everyone in agreement to proceed? So be it. So the next bolded print has to do with the term of office. This was a specific concern raised at our last meeting concerning the overlapping of the city manager's contract so that it's not coterminous with the elected officials. So the language reads, "The initial contract between the city manager and the city council shall be a minimum of 3 years and shall not terminate coterminous with the elected term of office of the city council members. Also, any extension of the contract between the city manager and the city council shall not terminate coterminous with the elected term of office of the city council members." Is that satisfactory to you all?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And that's important to assure that, and then I just want to, also, I've been telling some folks about this, that I was around, and I think Mrs. Viveros was around when Joe Feidelberg was the chairman of a much larger task force during, I believe, the administration of Carlton Viveros. And at that time, they did recommend the establishment of a city administrative position, but required that that city administrative position at that time was not coterminous with the elected officials. Through the years, and that's been like 20 plus years, it's changed. And we want to go back to that original intent that the manager is an independent, professional manager that's not connected to the terms of office of elected officials. So that's why we have that language. Any further discussion on that item? Okay, so the next item is on page 22, and this has to do with temporary absence of the city manager, section 3(7). And the new language, the acting city manager shall return to the duties of the position previously held prior to the selection by the city council to serve as acting city manager upon the return of the city manager or upon the hiring of a new city manager. So this was just to address the question, if the city manager leaves, then there's an appointment made of some existing managerial person within government to be an acting city manager. This indicates how that acting city manager would proceed until he's replaced or she's replaced. Okay, any further discussion on that? Next is the vacancy in office of the city manager, section 3-9, page 24. And the new language there is basically just to hire a new city manager. So that's basically once the vacancy occurs, that within 7 business days, there would be a convened meeting to begin the process to hire a new city manager. Okay, all set with that? Any questions, just raise your hand and let me know. Next page has to do with the election and the duties of chair and vice chair. This is of the school committee, and because that changes with this to the mayor and deputy mayor serving as chair and vice chair, the election, let's see, if this, as soon as practicable after school committee members' regular city election or through other means as provided in the charter. This has to do with if there were a special election, if there was a vacancy within the first 6 months, there would have to be a special election. So that's all that relates to. Okay? No questions on that? Next item is on page 32. Has to do again with repeating the language of if both mayor and deputy mayor removed from their positions at the same time or at a time prior to action taken as specified within section 2-2A, their replacements shall be as provided for in section 2-2A. And then the other item on that page just has to do with adding of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts City Ordinance of the City of Fall River to make sure we cover administrative organization. Any further questions on that? Okay, next is, it's going to be much easier after we get past this, I believe, eternally being optimistic. Maybe we have nothing left.
I think that's it.
That's the end. Okay, so that's the end of,
Okay, in that case,
Oh, wait a minute,
something
that-
missing.
I'm sorry, that's the end of the, of what we
Right. yeah.
went through previously.
No.
But now we've got to go to
We
There's
didn't
something
cover
that was
everything.
missing.
original.
Right.
Something got missed.
Okay,
Oh, that was, section, Article 3, Executive Branch, 3A. I think we didn't read part of that.
3A?
Yeah.
To the page, that helps.
15.
Page 15. Okay, actually, I think it became page 14. 1. Oh, there was a change.
3A.
What?
3A,
Okay, Article
Musical
3,
application.
Executive Branch.
yeah.
Section 3-1, City Manager Qualifications and Prohibitions.
Yeah.
What I did is, and this is an interesting little sideline, this had to do with the IT challenge. For some reason, the A, B, C, D became very difficult to get us to a D for some reason. We, in the IT department, couldn't figure out why, and I couldn't figure out why. So what I did in order to solve the problem, we had an A, a B, and a C. So I added qualifications and prohibitions. Prohibitions was originally the D. And prohibitions seemed to be better put under qualifications. So now we have the change of section 3-1 now reads city manager qualifications and prohibitions as item A, term of office as item B, and compensation prohibition. A refers to the city manager's qualifications and prohibitions. And it reads as you see it there. So the first part we didn't change. The only thing that we did add was the prohibition being waived.
No, it's not the only thing we added.
Okay, no, that's the only thing in A.
Oh,
In
no,
A.
it isn't.
Okay, and the following page, I'll read the whole thing once again then. Well, rather than reading the whole thing, because it's a little long, what is it, Ms. Conrad, you think this might be omitted from our,
Well, it's right here, you just didn't read it.
Oh, I didn't
Okay,
read
the
this?
city manager shall be appointed on the basis of administrative and executive qualifications only.
Oh,
And
okay.
need not be a resident of the city or commonwealth when appointed.
Okay.
The city manager shall hold
use the mic
office.
or else I'll read it if
You
you
can-
like. Okay, yeah, so what I guess I skipped over was
Yes.
bold print, the initial contract between the city manager and the city council. I think I did read that, but I'll read it again.
Yeah, you
The-
did read it.
I did read it.
You did.
Yeah. The initial contract between the city manager and the city council shall be a minimum of 3 years and shall not terminate coterminous with the elected term of office of the city council members. Also, any extension of the contract between the city manager and the city council shall not terminate coterminous with the elected term of office of the city council members.
No,
That's
that
the
you
language.
read, but then, keep going.
Oh, and/or ordinance? Okay, so the compensation, the only change on that was made was and/or ordinance. The original language was the city council shall by contract establish the compensation for the city.
No, it's
Manager.
before that. It's before that, it's in A.
Okay. Yeah, I read that. The city manager shall be appointed on the basis of administrative and executive qualifications only and need not be a resident of the city of Commonwealth when appointed. City manager shall hold office per contract with the city council and shall receive such compensation as shall be established by contract and/or by ordinance.
Okay,
I did read that.
okay, I have those off, sorry.
I know, and
I warned
we're
you.
gonna give Ms. Conrad some leeway here, because she's had a long
Ooh,
trip
jet
from
lag.
Germany. That took her 24 hours to get here, and we commend her, and we scheduled this meeting specifically because we wanted her to be here, but she's definitely on some kind of a jet lag moment, and having traveled from Germany with a canceled flight that basically brought her around the world and back to Fall River. So we're happy to have you back in Fall River.
Thank you.
And we'll try to keep you on track, Ms. Conrad, so we'll repeat anything you want us to repeat
Okay, okay,
for today. Not tomorrow, but for today. All right, so let's go on to now new territory. So the new territory is basically from item, and we already went through all of 3, so we're going to proceed with 3-2. We'll go to page 18, 16. I don't know if it's still
No, actually,
on the new
the
document.
bowling went all the way up through 32.
Yeah.
3. Okay, so we're all set with 3-1. That was the ABC. Now, it used to be ABCD, now it's only ABC. So now we're going to be going through sections 3-2 and beyond.
No,
No.
But-
oh,
No?
Mr. Chairman,
All the way up to 4-7.
My page is turned to Article 6.
you already covered Article 5-1.
Okay.
So we're at least
Good, Article
Oh, that's right,
6.
that's right. Oh, there. Okay.
past that.
All right, so we're really on Article 6.
Yes,
Yes, good.
yes, I left the
Good.
page, page 27.
Oh, yeah, because we had gone through everything else and there were all the
New
changes.
territory, Article 6.
So we're now beginning with Article 6. And this hasn't had any changes, so if you intend to make changes, these changes then would be incorporated into the revised draft. And the revised draft eventually will become the final draft. Okay, so it begins with fiscal year. And initially, and you'll see that the only other, and I guess it's my own obsession, is that I like to see words spelled out. So instead of just the number 75 days, I've written in the word 75. So that's the first underline, 75, second underline is 45. And the section 6-3, we struck mayor and wrote in city manager at least 30 days prior to the submission. And then we struck out mayor again, city manager shall notify the school committee. And then the committee shall be submitted to the city manager. So, any questions on Article 6-3? Okay, Article 6-4, action of the operating budget. Again, basic changes, just written out wherever a number was and striking mayor, putting in city manager throughout. 6-5, capital improvement program. City manager shall submit a capital improvement program at least 180 days prior to the start of each fiscal year. Okay with that? The next item on that page is city manager instead of mayor, and 14 written in. And that's the end of 6-5, 6-6, independent audit. If I'm going too quickly, just let me know. City manager annually, so instead of the mayor annually, city manager annually. That's the only change on page 30, other than striking mayor, city manager, adding 30. Okay, next, I'm going through the old documents, so my pages might not be the same, but quarterly budget updates, city manager, or designee during the second regular monthly meeting of the city council on the months of January, April. That's pretty much the same as we do now with quarterly budget reports, just the city manager becomes the responsible authority. Long-term financial forecast, 6-9, city manager in 180 days, the only 2 items changed there. Okay with that? If not, stop me at any point. Article 7, elections. So this is a change, and this is going to need clearly explanation to the voters, because I've heard so often saying the mayor would become only a ceremonial mayor, going to anniversaries and 100th birthdays and cutting ribbons. That's not the case at all with this change. If you think of a private entity, a private corporation, and you're the chairman of the board, you're a powerful force. In fact, I would think that most people would think that the chairman of the board of General Motors is equally important, if not more important, than the chief executive officer. So this change would make the mayor the chairman of the board of both the city council and the school committee. And the deputy mayor would be the second in the absence of the chairman of the board. So that team, and that's what this refers to, in the preliminary election, people would run as a team. So if candidate A and candidate B want to submit themselves as mayor and deputy mayor, they would go on the ballot as one team. If another candidate C and candidate D want to run as a team, they do that as well. So that's what this refers to. Very important, Article 7 elections. So preliminary election. Preliminary election to nominate candidates for mayor and deputy mayor elected as the leadership team. The only change there. And then the 28 days. Preliminary election procedures. So adding mayor and deputy mayor elected as a leadership team. And they have to collect the same number. We decided not to change the number of certified signatures because we wanted to stay focused on our task, which was only changing from mayor to city manager. So mayor elected as a deputy mayor and deputy mayor elected as a leadership team, still required 300 signatures for that and 150 signatures for certified signatures. Now, this is an important change that the committee decided. Yes, Madam
Question.
Chair.
So, if I'm understanding this, do they have to get,
Just use the mic. Just
well,
bring that
I don't know that it's working. Oh, I guess it is.
It's picking up. It's picking up.
Okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, do they have to secure 450 signatures? 300 for city council or for,
Yeah, that's sort of the last paragraph. So, but yes, in answer to your question, referring to this preliminary election procedures, and this was raised at the last meeting, what if candidate A and B, they want to be a candidate for mayor and deputy mayor, but they don't want to take a chance on not being a member of the council or a member of the school committee? So they would have to appear on the ballot also as a candidate for city council or candidates for school committee. They wouldn't have to. That would be their option. But if they only wanted to run for mayor and deputy mayor, that's where they end collecting their signatures. If they also want to be put on the ballot as a candidate for city council and a candidate for school committee, and/or a candidate for school committee, they would have to collect separate signatures to be put on the ballot for that position. And then if they won both, they would have to choose which they wanted to serve as. They couldn't serve as both a member and as deputy mayor or mayor. So that's what this paragraph refers to.
so, to that point, Mr. Chairman, as you've explained it, if they just want to be part of the leadership team on the ballot, they need 300 certified signatures.
Correct.
But if they decide they also want to be listed as candidates for the individual office of school committee or city council, then they will have to get 150 certified signatures for that individual spot on the
Right.
ballot.
I don't know
Right.
if that needs to be specified in any clearer language.
I was going to suggest that. I think this needs to be expanded to say exactly what you've stated. If you want to be part of the leadership team, then it's 300. However, if you want to be considered and also run individually as a member, then an additional 150 signatures to earn that spot has to be complete. I don't know, you're the wordsmith and you've been doing well thus far, but I think as it's currently written, it's confusing and it raises a point that maybe at some point people are going to get confused. So I think what needs to get spelled out is the fact that individuals will have the right to appear on the ballot in both the position as a deputy member, leadership team, but they also have the right to appear individually
Okay.
as a member for either one of the bodies, city council or school committee. We have to explain that they could be on that ballot twice.
Right. So here's what I'm going to suggest on this. There could be an additional sentence at the end of it all, and let me just read the last paragraph. Candidates for mayor and deputy mayor may appear on the ballot for city council or school committee in addition to their appearing on the ballot for mayor and deputy mayor, elected as a leadership team at any preliminary, regular, or special city election. If candidates for mayor and deputy mayor elected as the leadership team are elected at a regular election and also are elected as either a city council or school committee member, they must choose which position they accept. They cannot serve both as mayor and deputy mayor elected as the leadership team, as well as individual members of either the city council or the school committee. So there could be an additional sentence added. Candidates seeking both must collect signatures separately
Yes.
for each position he or she seeks.
I think that would clear up the confusion.
Do you think adding it at the end would be a good place to do that?
Well, it raised the question in my mind at the beginning.
beginning.
So you may want to put it in at the beginning. But let me just comment on that.
Yes.
And
continue.
I'll go along with the will of the committee. I could be convinced otherwise, but I think somebody needs to commit. You either run as part of the leadership team, or you run individually. That may be a problem with removing someone's right to be in multiple places on the ballot,
Yeah,
but
which is the
I
case
think,
now.
exactly, understood. But I'm just suggesting it's.
I'd actually second that. I agree with that. That's one of the things that I see no need to run for
Right.
3 positions whatsoever. I mean, if you have confidence in yourself and you want to run for one
Bring
thing,
the
run
mic
for
to
one
you,
thing.
Mike, so. Mike, bring the mic.
You gotcha. I just was seconding.
Well, there isn't a motion yet.
No, there
so-
wasn't. I was just,
We're just having some
using a
discussion. Yeah.
discussion word.
Right.
I would say that I agree with that as well. I think why would you put your hat into
5
different
rings.
rings when you can just say, I want to be part of the city council or I want to be part of the leadership team, but put all your efforts into that. I have never agreed with that. I've seen it. I mean, it's happened in the past in recent elections here, which I don't agree with. But I would say if you're gonna make substantial changes like that, I would say that'd be one of them.
Right.
I agree with that.
Let me just take a position that I don't disagree with your perspective. I've always felt, I think it's detrimental to the candidate to put him or herself out there, oh yeah, I'm gonna run for city council and mayor, or I'm gonna run for school committee member and mayor. I think the voters take that attitude that you're both taking, is that pick one, if you wanna be the mayor, run for mayor. If you wanna be city councilor, run for mayor. I do think, though, at the last meeting, we did have this discussion, and the point was raised, and I think it was a valid point. Why should someone, first of all, I know if it would stand up in court, because you're prohibiting someone from running for a particular office. So I think there's some judicial issue there, that do we have the authority in the charter to prevent a person from seeking public office for a particular office? Right now, it is the law of the land, if you will, that you can run for mayor and you can also run for city council, or you can run for school committee, or you can run for both. You can put your name on the ballot for all 3. We did discuss this, and I think it was, I don't want to say for sure that it was Mr. Hessler, but I think there was an argument with, what if, someone who is passionate about wanting to be the part of the leadership team, but they certainly don't want to give up their opportunity to be a voice, one of 9 on the city council or one of 7 on the school committee. So they want to just sort of basically underscore the fact that they want to serve one way or the other. If the voters don't want them to be the mayor and the deputy mayor, the voters should be allowed to let them be a school committee member or a city councilor. Why would we want to take the step of prohibiting the voters from making that decision? That, to me, is more of a voter's decision than it is a righteous decision, that it's not right to run for 2 offices. Let the voters decide if it's right. Let them pick a candidate running for mayor or deputy mayor, and also running for school committee member or city council. Let them decide. No, I don't think this team's the right leadership team, but I do think they're a righteous voice to be a member of the city council or a member of the school committee. And then also to change it now, I think, would be to reverse what we decided at our last meeting, which would, I think, might open up also that whole can of reconsideration and change the decision that we made at the last meeting. I think it might go beyond the scope. But anyway, that's my argument for keeping it as is. Mrs. Conrad?
Well, first of all, I'd say we've got a bit of a hybrid situation here because we're modeling this partly after Cambridge, where they elect the mayor and the deputy mayor. Do they have a deputy mayor? I don't think so. They elect the mayor out of the city council, and not. But we decided that in Fall River people will want to vote for the mayor because in Fall River people have always voted for the mayor. But we still have the business in there about if the mayor resigns for some reason, they get elected out of the city council. So we're kind of trying to play the game both
No,
ways.
if the mayor resigns, the deputy mayor becomes mayor.
Yeah, okay, if they both resign, they get
In the city council,
replaced.
if they resign
Yeah,
simultaneously.
right, yeah, so we are somewhat trying to play it both ways, I think. And my other point is that you're discouraging us from revisiting things, and my personal opinion is that if we're going to bring positive change to the structure of government in Fall River, we're going to do it by getting the people of Fall River excited about what we're doing, and we're not going to get there by prohibiting discussion because we want to work fast and get things out of the way and not rethink anything. I think the voters want the answers to these questions. I think that's all I have to say.
Well,
Very good.
I may wake up later.
Mrs. Viveras?
just a quick comment to that, and one of the other reasons that I raised it is I think it's going to be confusing for the voter. Okay, if I voted for the person over here on leadership team, should I go in and vote for the person again over on the other side of the ballot, or am I some way negating my vote? Where do I want them? So you're asking them to vote twice. Vote for me over here on the leadership team side, and then vote for me over here on the city council side in the event I don't make enough votes.
Which is the current system.
Understood, but I think it's not quite the same system, because right now, the offices are very distinct. There's mayor, there's city council, there's school committee. In this case, the leadership team is also part of one of those, in fact, both of those legislative bodies. So I think there's clearly a distinction there. So again, I'm more concerned with the fact that legally perhaps we cannot prohibit someone from doing it, in which case I don't want it to get challenged on that basis. But I do think I think people should commit, and I think it could get confusing as we have it laid out if they can do multiple positions on the ballot that effectively get them to the same place. So.
I agree, and I think Fall River, us as a whole, have a tough time with the specific ballots. I mean, you just saw the recall election. People thought when they said recall, it meant it's over and you can't vote for them, or they said, or you can't vote for Jazel Cray, or recall him and I vote for him. It's not. Everyone needs it spelled out and make it as simple as possible. Not saying that, I mean, I have a tough time myself with it. So, I mean, it's just, I can see the confusion. It's easily there. And that's all I got to say.
Okay. Further discussion, Mrs. Conrad?
I had a thought. Perhaps I can retrieve it. I can't. Never mind. I'll think later.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so, you know, in the absence of finality on this, I do think that the constitutional issue is an important one. I don't think that we should write into the charter something that, on its face, prohibits someone from running for public office. It would prohibit someone from running for part of the leadership team, as well as running for a city council seat or a school committee member seat. As much as I am adverse to that, I understand that the importance of people's right to choose, and that would be both those who are choosing to run for office should have the right to choose to run for whatever office they want to run for. And then the voters' right to choose, and they can choose whether or not they want to elect someone to a leadership position or to a council position or to a school committee position, as long as it's written as it is written, that they can't serve in both. That to go beyond that scope, I think, goes beyond our ability at this point, because it goes beyond the issue of city manager mayor into the question of the right to participate in an election, either as a candidate or the rights of voters to make a decision as to whether or not they want to elect someone to one position versus another position. So, I think originally this conversation was about being sure that it's understood that if you are running as part of the city leadership team, that you'd have to collect the 300 signatures, and if you're also running for a school committee or position or a city council position, you would have to draw separate papers and collect 150 signatures to put your name on the ballot for one of those positions. And that, I think we're all in agreement on that if we're going to allow them to go forward, they need to have two separate nomination papers.
I just have a quick question. With this massive charter change, would this charter need to be revised again by the AG's office?
The question is that there's a process for home rule petitions.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the beginning of the process for home rule petitions.
No, I get that, but what we pretty much, when we did the charter last time, it was everything that went in all our changes, and then they sent it up and they say, does this go with mass state law? Is this legal and anything like that? And we just had one minor change. So it's one of those things where if we feel that whatever's best, it goes up, they say you can't do it, then you can't do it. But I think saying what is legal and illegal or prohibitive to people is going to be decided by them when they read through this.
Yeah, just to finish the point though, my conversation thus far has been with the legal counsel for the Secretary of State's office, not the Attorney General's office. And the Secretary of State's office has indicated that what we're doing is right. We begin the process here. We pass this, then all of this will go to Corporation Counsel for his review, and then in conjunction with the Great and General Court's legal counsel, they would look at the language. I assume the counsel for the Great and General Court would have at his or her disposal the Attorney General's input into that process. But then it goes from here to the City Council, up to the mayor through legal counsel, our own legal Corporation Counsel, in conjunction with the Secretary of State's recommendation, also to the legal counsel for the Great and General Court. If it gets through all of that process, it gets then presented to the legislature, and they vote on it. I'm sure at that point that they would get not only their own legal counsel's advice, but would pass it through the Attorney General's office, just as we pass everything through our attorney. I would think the Commonwealth would pass it through their attorney.
No, I understand the process. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that while what we're adding and what we agree on to add in here is we shouldn't get hung up on having 40-minute discussions whether or not it should be in or not. And if we as a whole body feel it's important, then we can just add it, and it's going to get weeded out later.
Jim.
Mrs. Reverse.
Yeah, no, I would agree with Mr. Quinn. I think we need to send up what we think is the best policy decision here. And if there's a problem with the legality, then that will get flushed out when it goes through the approval process. But there's one other point I want to make, and that's regarding the right to run for office and, the constitutional rights. This is a little different because either one of those gets you to the same point. If you run as a leadership team, you are going to be a member of the city council. If you run just as a city councilor, you are going to be a member of the city council. So by requiring someone to choose, you're not taking away their right to serve as a member of the city council. Either one of those is going to get them to that point. So we're not denying them anything. And I think that's an important distinction. If the offices were totally disparate and there was no overlap, then we'd be saying, all right, maybe legally we can't require you to choose one over the other, which is the current system. Do I want to be on the city council, or do I want to be on the school committee, or do I want to be the mayor? In this case, the leadership team members serve on those very bodies by virtue of their position. So we're not precluding them from serving on one of those bodies by requiring them to either say, be part of the leadership team or be part of the membership. So I think there is a clear distinction between what we have now and what we're required to do versus what we have before us. So I would concur that I think we need to require them. And again, the confusion, Mr. Quinn mentioned it. That's absolutely true. That last ballot with the recalled people felt, I voted once and I expressed my sentiment. I don't need to do anything else. There was confusion. So, and I think you're going to have the same problem here. Which way do I vote? I want the person on the city council. Do I vote for them over here? And everybody's told you can only vote for somebody one time. We're basically telling them now you're going to vote for them 2 times. You're going to vote for them over here as leadership, and then you're going to vote for that same person again for city council. Both of those results get you to the same legislative body, and so I think it's going to be confusing.
I agree.
Well, there are a couple of things that I think about when you said that. And an example would be the Senate, the United States Senate. Someone can run for vice president along with president, and they become the chairman of the Senate. They can also run for senator on the same election. So I don't know who's up for re-election right now that's also running for president, or might be running eventually for vice president. But they, in essence, are elected and could run for either of 2 positions, and then they have to choose which one they're going to accept. Either vice president or senator. They can't be both. If they get elected to the Senate and they also get elected as president or vice president, they have to choose one or the other. They can't be both. That would be the same case here. If they were elected to the city council and they were also elected as part of the leadership team, they would have to choose which office they want to be sworn into. There is nothing that precludes people. You said something about you can't vote for the same person twice. Well, you certainly can vote for the same person twice. I mean, I can remember not too distant past that there were candidates that ran for mayor and they ran for city councilor.
For the same office.
No, they ran for mayor and city right, for the same office.
So that's what we're telling them.
Well, they're running for
Voting.
mayor, and the leadership team is a different office than is the city councilor position. A city councilor position is exclusively a city councilor position. A leadership team position is both chair of the school committee or vice chair of the school committee, as well as president and vice chair of the council. So that is a different position. It's not totally transferable. In the challenge to do some wordsmithing, I did do something, and basically this is arguing that we shouldn't go there. We shouldn't go to that point of trying to create something that's going to have to then go to an attorney general to pause and determine whether or not we even have the right to do it. I think certainly we have the right to proceed with what we've got, and adding a sentence that says candidates for more than one position must collect signatures separately for each position he or she seeks. That language keeps us going down the road. Otherwise, if we're going to go with some language that's going to prohibit people from being on the ballot for one position or another position, then I'm not prepared to create the language to do that.
I just want to say I
Mr.
agree.
Quinn,
I
you
agree.
recognize.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Ms. Viveris, and I think I don't know how I look at it. I've always looked like an election as something that with consequences. When you're running, there's consequences for you. You win, you lose. It just makes it seem like you can just run for the leadership team, run for the city council. Hey, I lost that. Hey, I'm still on the council. I mean, I like when there's a clear-cut decision made in front of you. You want to run for the leadership team. You lose, you're off the council. Mm-hmm. You wanted a leadership position in that, and that's that. And then you just go for, if you just say, hey, listen, I don't think I'm ready for that, then you just stay on the council and run for the council. But I agree, it all leads to the same place. I mean, the leadership team, there are different job descriptions a little bit, but you're on the same boards and committees. So I think it's a very valid point. I yield.
I'm not detracting from the validity of the point. I agree with you. It's a very valid point. I think that from a position as a candidate, I understand the clarity of not running for two positions. I just think we're infringing upon, and this is, I'm not a lawyer, but I think we're infringing upon the candidate's right to run. If he does what he's supposed to do, collects his signatures, puts his name on the ballot, then it's up to the voters to decide. I think for us to not go there is basically, is gonna tie this up in some haggling that maybe is worth letting it haggle for another period of time. I don't think it's gonna be something that is gonna keep us on this track to get this possibly on the ballot this year. So, questions, Mrs.
Well,
Conrad?
I agree that, I agree that people should be able to run for both positions myself. I think basically the job of mayor and deputy mayor is the same as the job of councilor, except more so. And if they want to do that kind of work and don't know if they'll win or not, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to put themselves in both places. I think we shouldn't be throwing away good candidates because they may not win this year. You know, good workers on our council.
So, we have a dilemma. Any further discussion on this matter?
Well,
Want to bring the mic, just bring the mic to you.
sure. I agree with Mike and Kathy.
Just bring that switch, make sure the switch is up towards you. There's a
top.
switch there on the side. There you go.
There you go.
There you go. That's it.
Okay, great. I agree with Mike and Kathy. There needs to be clear verbiage. There needs to be a separation of either or. What position, what role are you running for? It almost appears as if it's a wild, wild west. Win, lose, or draw. I'll somehow make my way to where I want to be. Make a decision. There was a lot of confusion with regards to the recall, and it was for this very reason. So I think moving forward, if we have an opportunity through the home rule petition to make changes, we need to do that. In addition, you mentioned, Kathy, that we should allow the legal department to straighten out the verbiage. We, the body at present, need to make a decision on how we're going to word it. Allow the legal team to come to a conclusion on what needs to be edited. So I yield.
Well, I have a motion ready on at least the language that's consistent with the charter as it has been prepared. If we want to proceed with that motion, if it's defeated, then we can have a second motion. All right, so I'm going to ask that, and I will move that the sentence be added to Article 7, Section 7-2, preliminary election procedures, that there be added this sentence. Candidates for more than one position must collect signatures separately for each position he or she seeks. So that would be that motion to be consistent with what we currently are working on. And I'll repeat that. So candidates for more than one position must collect signatures separately for each position he or she seeks. And
So, Mr.
I would
Chairman,
ask if there's
I
a
would,
second to that.
I'll second.
So it's been seconded. So further discussion now on this. Question, yes, Mr. Viveras?
no, just that I'm going to support the motion because if the alternative motion doesn't succeed, I think that language is important if this is going to go forward in its current form. So I'm going to support the amendment, but I'm
Ready to talk
making it clear
further.
that I'm not in support of the concept.
So we can go
just-
further
yeah,
beyond that.
Right.
Okay, so on this motion, any further discussion? Okay, roll call on the motion.
Aguirre, Conrad, yes. Hetzler. Quinn,
Yes.
Sadler,
Yes.
Viveras.
Yes.
Camara.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that motion has been adopted. So, we can, just again to I would suggest at this point, because this is a change from what we've been building on over the last few meetings, could we initiate a question to the Corporation Council to proceed with giving us an opinion on whether we could prohibit someone from seeking two positions? And getting his opinion on that would then give us direction as to whether we could then change the language, which I think would require then, if we're going to change the language, that we would have to convene after the council meets. Because this effort today is so that we can present something to the council on Monday. We may let it go to the council on Monday as is, and if Corporation Council says, yeah, I think you can do that, I think you can prohibit people from running for two offices, then we can refer it back to this task force to then go over that again. But I do think we need some legal counsel before we start making changes. And maybe that legal counsel includes not just Corporation Counsel, but an opinion from the Attorney General. Mr. Quinn?
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I mean, the way I like to see it isn't the way that a majority of the city, I'm sure, is going to want to see it. So I'm just a little. I don't want to get hung up on this stuff because, like, I truly feel that you should only be able to run for one thing. But I can just hear in my head these the population being like, "Oh my God, they're infringing on my rights and everything like that." So I mean, I'm just a little. Again, I just don't want to get hung up on this. And I could just see this is a more or less a minute detail, but it could just negatively impact this.
It's an important detail.
It is important,
Right,
but
I don't want to minimize it. What I think again though, we sort of in a way we were going around this a separate track when we were talking about should an appointed official, and Mr. Hetzler raised this and gave full disclosure that he was talking about his nephew. You know, should an elected official should someone who's a public employee be prohibited from being an elected official? And it was decided, even though there was strong sentiment that no one should be prohibited from running for public office, but there was a feeling that it was beyond the scope of this task force. This task force was exclusively focusing on city manager versus mayor form of government. That for us to then go a step further and saying who should or shouldn't run for office was going beyond the scope. In a sense, this is another side to that same question. There's strong feeling, obviously, that no, you shouldn't run for both mayor, deputy mayor, and city council school committee. But that goes beyond the scope of the focus of this task force.
I agree, and I thought like the scope was pretty narrowed in the beginning, but now when you're changing direct language that it impacts, we're not changing any language whether or not if you're a firefighter you can serve on the school committee or anything like that. I mean, that was also a very healthy debate we had during the Charter Commission on that subject. And I know, I think in that situation, it's kind of a very, very special one. But I mean, I'm not even going to speak about that right now. But I'm saying what we're talking about is language that's directly changed in here. So I feel like that is in the scope of what we're talking about.
Okay.
I yield.
I would like us to have a motion, if someone's willing to make this motion, or I'll make it. The motion basically that we seek from our Corporation Counsel and ask him to seek through state legal advisors whether or not we could prohibit someone from running for two offices simultaneously. Something to that effect. Mrs. Viveris?
So I think the fact that the prohibition of being an employee and running for public office, which is the prohibition that was approved in the last charter, if that was determined to be constitutional, that somebody gives up their right to run for elective office if they're an employee, then I think this certainly is going to be upheld if we say you have to choose one office or another, especially where they're going to end up on the same body through either course of action. So you raise a good point, Mr. Chairman. The fact that the original charter enabled us to say, if you are an employee, you cannot run for elective office, or do both. You can run, but you then have to choose, and that was upheld.
I'm not sure it was upheld, but.
Well, it
It's
got
questionable. It
through
might
all
be-
of the approvals, it went
Yeah,
through
it might be
the,
going, but Mr. Hetzler was indicating.
he may
might
challenge,
go.
but I'm saying, this is the same process that we're taking. You had Corporation Counsel say, he rendered an opinion on the issue of Mr. Hetzler, and he determined that he is not gonna be able to run for reelection unless he's
He-
willing to
he-
give up.
He can run for reelection.
But again, he's gonna have to give up his position
Have to
as an
choose.
employee of the city. He's gonna have to choose, exactly. And the end result is gonna be, if he chooses to be an employee, he's not gonna be able to serve as an elected member of the school committee. So, in this case, I think if that passed muster with all legal minds, this is certainly gonna pass muster if we say you have to choose one position over the other, because we're not taking away their constitutional right to run for the office. We're just saying, in what capacity do you want to serve on that office? Do you want to serve on city council as leadership, or do you want to serve on city council as a member? But we're not telling them they cannot run for the office. So I see this being upheld. Irrespective of that, I'm going to make my last point. I have concerns about sending a document to a city council with one intent, which is the intent that we've recently approved. And then if the corporation council comes back and says, oh, it's okay, you can limit them and force them to choose, is the matter then gonna come back to this committee and then go back to city council and say, well, we changed our minds because now we can legally say this? I have some concerns about when we go to the city council, it should convey the intent of this committee, this task force. And we should be giving them a document that says, this is what we collectively believe should happen. If the corporation council comes back and says, oh, no, you can't do that, well, then we go back to city council and say, one of the things that we wanted to do, we've been advised we cannot do. But I think what you're suggesting is we're gonna go and present this document and say, this is what we want, we support this, and then if the corporation council says, well, you could do it the other way, we're gonna go back and say, okay, we changed our mind, now we want it another way, because we're legally able to do it. So I have some concerns about the messaging and the process to the council if we take the tack that you're suggesting. Just my personal opinion, so
It's an
I'll
opinion.
vote accordingly.
It's an opinion, I highly respect and regard.
Of course.
It's sort of reminding me of days when we were on the council together, and we might have come to a different
Yep.
conclusion, but always respectful of each other's perspective. I'm at a little bit of a loss right now because I'm agreeing that it's an interesting topic and it's worthy of further input. I think that further input should come prior to our codifying it in words, that we get an opinion from the Corporation Council and from the Attorney General first. At the same time, I do want to see this thing proceed, because again, in being the eternal optimist, I would like to see us proceed to get a vote in November. I celebrated a birthday yesterday, and I'm very cognizant of time and life, and my sense is, one in the hand is worth two in the bush. So I think we've got something in the hand here that's ready to go forward. I'd rather not let it die, let it go forward. There's also the opportunity for this to be revisited on a future charter change, because I do think it's going a little bit beyond the scope of this task force. I agree with Mr. Quinn, though, that we've already gone a little bit beyond the scope in terms of, but I don't think we've gone beyond the scope that's not justifiable. Certainly changing from mayor to city manager means that we did something a little different. We've added deputy mayor, we've reduced the school committee school committee by one position, we've reduced city council positions by 2 positions, so that's significant. However,
Hold on, I think I missed that. We're reducing the city council size from 9 to 7?
no, it's still 9.
9, but
there's a
two-
mayor and deputy
okay,
mayor
yeah, I
that
got
become
you.
part of the
Okay, yeah.
9, and the same with the school committee.
Okay, I got that.
So Can we, and I know maybe one last vote, is to refer to Corporation Council for opinion? Would that be okay to do, so that Ms. Sadler can vote on that? Can we do that? Would you be willing to do that, Mrs. Viveras? Mr. Quinn, Mrs. Sadler?
You need a second,
I
Mr.
will
Chairman?
second it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I would like to make a quick comment, which is that.
We'll make the motion first, because I'm.
You made the motion.
Okay,
I've got
so
it down
the
here.
motion made that we refer to Corporation Council, the question, could we incorporate in the amended charter a prohibition to candidates to
Yeah.
run for more than one
Yeah,
office?
Yeah, and I seconded it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Yes.
quick mention that Carl Hetzler had felt, I think fairly strongly, that he wanted the being able to run for both offices at once. I think he had brought it up a couple of
That's
times.
true.
As I remember it.
Right,
And
he's not here now
unable
to
to be here.
advocate for himself, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, we could visit it again with a full committee. Mr. Quinn?
I just, and I want it to reflect that this is a very unique situation. I don't want it broad-stroked prohibited to run for two offices. That sounds very like, yeah, you can pick one or the other of school committee or city council.
That's
But in this specific case, it's a little different. So I just want to make it clear. I don't want to say, oh, can you just run for only one office, or can you run for all of them? And then Attorney Macy's like, no, that prohibits your rights or something like that.
Well, we'll get an opinion and then.
On the specificity of this specific issue.
Any further discussion on the motion? Anybody need to have the motion reread?
No.
No? All in favor of the motion, do a roll call on it?
Aguirre, Conrad, yes. Hetzler, Quinn,
Yes.
Sadler,
Yes.
Viveras,
Yes.
Camara.
Yes.
Okay, we did it.
Okay, well, thank you. I want to commend all of you for this good work as we proceed. Thank you, Ms. Sadler, for being here. We still have a quorum, so we're going to try to get through the rest of this. Determination of candidates. The changes made, mayor and deputy mayor elected as a leadership team. The two elected leadership team of candidates receiving the highest votes. This is just the same as it is now, basically, preliminary election, top two finishes get to go to the final election. That's all there is on that page. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, we proceed. The next item, ballot position, that remains the same, no change there, other than the 7 days reference. Other changes on the next pages are just numerical changes. The next substantive change, haven't found it yet. Anybody finds it before me, let me know. City manager 21, I think we're almost at the end. Let's see, what else? Inspection of documents.
This is the stuff we decided not to move on.
Okay, time of taking effect.
What page? Or what section?
Well, it's time of taking effect is section 10-5.
Okay, thank you.
And I created this language initially, we didn't review it at our last meeting because we didn't get to this section. But I wondered about when this would be taking effect. This would be changed if this doesn't make it through this year, but if it does go through this year, which is the intent in submitting it to the council, upon passage by the city voters at the city election on November 5th, 2019, the charter, as amended, will take effect Inauguration Day 2022, with the city government inaugurated on Inauguration Day 2020, responsible for preparing the city and the school department for the new city government to be elected on November 2nd, 2021, and inaugurated on January 3rd, 2022. So what that says, if there's any need for any explanation on that, but basically it means that this does not affect this city's election this year. This proceeds as it goes. However, whoever gets elected this year would be responsible if this charter amendment passed on this year. The new administration that comes into office over the course of the next 2 years would be responsible for implementing this charter to take effect in 2022. Mr. Quinn.
I think we have a really unique situation with this, and I don't really feel comfortable with the timeline on this myself. I'm just forecasting this. You have a mayor right now who could potentially get beat. If this goes right up through, the city council passes it, he stamp this yes, get it on the ballot, and this could just potentially cause even more controversy. I can just sitting here thinking about it, I can just see it. I can just see it happening. Nothing is ever easy. I can just see that happening. I just can. So I'm just a little uncomfortable with the timeline of this.
Well, there needs to be some, it has to take effect at some point.
I know it does, but I mean, I think November 2019, I think that's a little fast-tracked myself for such a massive change, and I think just the way politics are in the city and the way some of this stuff is going, I can just see this getting to a level that's at an incredibly fast pace where we're not ready for this. And I think if the current mayor loses, rubber stamps this, we're in a place where we don't really know where we are in 2 years trying to put infrastructure in that I think no one is ready to do at such a fast pace.
Just a quick response to that, though.
Yep.
This will not go forward if it doesn't have the approval of the council, first of all.
I got that.
To get it go forward, and the mayor to have it go forward, and the state legislature to have it go forward, and the voters of Fall River to have it go forward. So none of this goes forward without those four very important decision makers: the council, the mayor, the state legislature, and the people, ultimately. That's the only way this goes forward. So, again,
I just want you to understand where I'm coming from on this, because this is 61, 62. Because myself, if I was the mayor, me being a little selfish, why would you give it up? Why would you even say, hey, what I would say is they've done a lot of exploratory information on this. It's good to have if we ever need to get there, but I don't think we're at that place yet. That's what I would say if I was the mayor, personally. And I think 99% of people would do that. But I'm just saying there's a 1% chance that if the current mayor loses and says, hey, if you went to every single city and town in Massachusetts that has a mayor and said, who would approve this? I'd love to actually know what would happen. And I know it's the council, it's the mayor, it's the legislature, and the voters. But I think the ones in the beginning are the easiest. I can just, Ms. Veras, do you understand where I'm coming from on this?
I was going to weigh in.
I yield, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Mr. Quinn, thank you. Mrs. Viveras.
Okay, now, just to concur with Mr. Quinn, I think there's another element here to everything that he said, an additional element, and that's voter education. We are not going to have adequate time between when this comes down and that election to adequately inform and educate the public as to exactly what it is we're trying to promote. And I do have some serious concerns about their approval. Mm-hmm. There's some substantive change here. Mayor, deputy mayor is a huge change. The city manager from city administrator, while we, and personally, I did not encounter through our exercise a huge change in responsibility or duties. It shifts the hiring to the council versus the mayor, but beyond that, the day-to-day, I don't see much difference between what the manager does and what I do as city administrator. So, but I think for people to understand what that change means, last time, I mean, there were public hearings, there were mailings, there were...
I mean, you're talking about the charter?
Yes, right.
That was a 2-year education process.
It was, and I think as much as we may be only modifying certain sections, the changes are significant, very significant. And I think I would concur that we're not really going to be giving our changes adequate time. We're not going to be able to give the public adequate time to be educated, to understand them, and to make an informed decision on it. So I think the timing is extremely ambitious, and again, I worry that the decision that's made is not going to be as informed a decision as it needs to be based on the timeline. We're just not going to have time. We have no budgetary resources like the Charter Commission had to do mailing, to try to educate the public. We don't have any resources to do that, so it's going to be, I don't know, word of mouth, social media. I don't know how we're going to get the word out, but I think there's going to be a problem with that. And I'm circling back to where I was a little while ago. There's still a question as to some of what we're suggesting that now is before legal counsel. He's going to come back. I don't know what this committee's intent is. So if Corporation Counsel comes back and says it's okay to require people to choose between the leadership team and or the regular position, what then? Do we reconvene? And then do we have to go back to the council for another vote? Or are we going to take his decision and not act on it and do nothing? In which case, why are we asking him if we have no intent of... There's some timing issues going on here. So I just think we need to give it adequate time. And again, I continue to be concerned about that issue regarding the choice. I don't want to create another circumstance where there's voter confusion. And that was one of my major concerns with this run for dual offices. There is going to be voter confusion, and we're not even going to have time to adequately educate them on that. So I'm inclined to agree. I'll defer back to
I'll just say, people, with the amount of education we did on the charter, people are still confused about things and what we did and what it was, and the public had every opportunity. They physically got a survey mailed to their house. The results of the survey were in the Herald News, and we did like 15 meetings. I mean, public forum meetings. So, I think this is like essentially, I would say, rewriting 30% of the charter, which is a huge block of it. So you're right, the education really has to be there for people to make informed decisions about this.
And we didn't go through all this work to have it fail at the ballot box.
Mm-hmm.
So that's...
Well, I guess, again, I may be the voice of optimism here, but I feel like it is an issue we're on target for time. Separate from the personalities, let's separate ourselves from who is mayor and who are our candidates for mayor and who is city administrator and where we go from here. People are very tuned into this city election. And this city election, I think, provides us with an opportunity to consider an alternative. I have been in contact with media folks, particularly the local newspaper and the local radio station. And I have been interviewed through FRC TV to give at least an overview as to how far we've come. I agree that there's a lot more that needs to be done, but I think that now is a good time to do that because of the heightened awareness. I have not met with the mayor concerning this, so I don't know if he would even allow it to move forward. He may not. I don't know. He may. I don't see this as a change in the mayor's position that some refer to as going from chief executive officer to a ceremonial mayor. This is not a ceremonial mayor. This is leadership that's significant to the position of mayor, because the mayor would be a part of a leadership team that impacts the day-to-day decisions of the council and the school committee. This is the last issue that we have to deal with before forwarding this. If we change the language, I guess the only change would be then to make it everything 2 years later than it is, so that it doesn't take effect. It doesn't go on the ballot in 2019. It goes on the ballot in 2021. I don't know if this task force can can dictate the future of a new government. There is a new government that takes effect. This task force is in effect because it's appointed by the current government. This task force may in fact have no jurisdiction to even recommend anything in 2020 because it no longer exists as I would see it. We serve at the pleasure of the current president of the council. The next president of the council may say, I don't want the task force to continue to do any work. And then therefore, even if we did change it to 2 years from now, it becomes moot because it doesn't exist and we don't exist and neither does our recommendations exist. I think now's the time to make it happen. Mrs. Conrad?
Couldn't we simply change the wording so that it takes over 2 years after the election at which it is okayed?
I think that's what's happening now, right? It wouldn't take effect.
Well, this
If
is-
it gets approved this November, it takes effect
Yeah, but when
2
Mrs.
years
Conrad is
later.
suggesting we strike the
The
dates and
dates.
just say it takes effect 2 years after adopted by the voters at a city election.
Really think that, I think you're a very thoughtful person, and this timetable on this is just so short, and the education, and this is huge. I just don't know why we would rush to throw this in so fast. I mean, we've had meetings, and a fair amount of them, but I think this specific thing, the structure of the city government, is probably the most important part of the charter, and I just don't foreseeably see it having this be on the ballot be reasonable in November. I personally don't, and everyone else can definitely think that, but I think it's just a rush, and I yield.
Good point, Mrs. Conrad.
It's not our call when it goes on the ballot, it's the city council's call. So if we give them language where if they put it on the ballot and it passes, it takes effect 2 years after that, whenever it may be it 2025 or 2030 or whatever.
But it's our call to
Right.
give this to the council, and I will personally not feel comfortable giving it to the council and saying this has to be, or you can, or feel free to put this on the ballot. I don't feel comfortable with that. I yield.
Well, very good. I think we have 2 points of view at this point, where maybe even 3. One is to,
Four.
yeah, maybe 4. We certainly have one, fourth might be no change. But one might be to let it go as is. Second might be to let it go without dates specific. That basically would say upon passage by city voters at a city election, as amended at some future inauguration day would take effect. I mean, the language would have to be worked on, but, you know, to me, that nearly kills it, because I think this council, this government that serves now is the government that must act on this if it's going to go forward. If this is to go forward at some time in the future, then this government does not have authority over next year's government. Next year's government is a different government. So this either goes forward, or I think it dies,
Yeah.
frankly.
I think that what we've done here, if you take anything away from it, is giving a foundation for people in the future to not have to work on anything like this. It's here. So I wouldn't say like it's a done, dead deal. I just think I will agree with Ms. Viveris. I just, the education purpose of this cannot be done in 6 months, 4 months. It just can't be. So I think this is,
2.5 months.
2.5 months. All right then.
I mean, really?
It's just, yeah, it is 2.5 months. I just,
Well, it's a little bit more than that, but let's not quibble about.
I'm not
months.
quibbling about months.
It's 3 months.
Fine,
It's the
3
month of
months is
August,
just
September, and
October,
October.
November.
unless people feel free, want to go give something once a week, which I surely can't possibly do, or anyone else here because of work. It's just really, really, I just think it's fast tracked. I think we have to have another meeting talking about this, and That's all I have to say, again.
Let me offer something, because I share your concerns. When I began this process, I said this may not, in fact, I said the odds are against us implementing this and letting it go forward this year and letting it go to the ballot this year. I'm now cautiously optimistic that we can let this go to the ballot this year, and maybe it becomes an exercise that does not get passage. It's an exercise of discussion, a discussion that could continue on into the next 2 years, and maybe it's visited again in 2021. I'm prepared to commit to this being my primary responsibility from now until Election Day. To me, this is the most important thing. And I before I got to this meeting, I said, you know what, I'm going to just go around to the table and take a look at our collective experiences as members of this task force. Probably in terms of degrees, and I know educational degrees are not everything, but the 7 of us probably have 10 to 12 degrees, both undergraduate and graduate degrees in a whole range of things. So I think we're a pretty sharp group. In terms of years of experience, in terms of service to government, I'm estimating we're well over 100 years of service to government in various capacities, school committee members, city councilors, business people, volunteers, activists. This group is got tremendous credentials. In fact, I think if we were a consulting firm with both our degrees and our experiences, we probably should be getting about $150,000 to $250,000 to do the work that we've done over the last 8 months. So I think that we present to the public a very strong foundation of how we came to this where we are. The question as to whether or not it's feasible to present it to the voters in November, the November 5th, is that the election date? I think it is November 5th, which is 3 months from now. If the city of Fall River, at this time in our lives where government is so closely watched at every level, if we're not prepared to, as a community, to take a good look at a possible change in government, and maybe we should table this for a minute for me to give you the next document that I prepared for you as to how significant I think this change is. I think that we could go forward with this. So, having said all that, I think we should go forward. I think we should present this. It has 2 steps before it even goes out of our hands in the city to the state, and then 1 big step after that is to the voters. The city could say, listen, you've done great work, but we don't think this is good enough. We want to send it back to you to continue to do more work. And then we can proceed to do more work. Let some decision, I don't want to pass the buck, but I am, in a sense, passing the buck, to the council and to the mayor to say whether or not they want the voters to have the opportunity to take a look at this. If they want the voters to take a look at this, then they'll pass it on to the state legislature, and then it'll come back to the voters. And then it'll be the responsibility of us and the responsibility of the community at large to do their homework from now until November 5th to decide whether or not this is a change worth pursuing. So, could I, for the moment, just put this aside and let me give you my next document? Because I know that we're to a point where I don't know how much longer we can go.
I'm close. I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
leave pretty
Okay,
soon.
let me give you then this that I prepared, which has to do, and if I could ask that we make a motion to take out of order the continuation of this discussion, and that we just hold it in abeyance, and that we take a look at item 5.
So moved.
Okay, so be it. Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 items. This is what we ultimately would be voting on if we decide to go forward. 2 of those. Give me back one of those.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one. Draw one of these. Okay, so this is the ballot question, and this would be probably, in a sense, I'm gonna give you a minute to read it, because this falls under 5 next steps. And along with it, I'm gonna give you one more document, if I can find it.
Mr. Chairman, while you're looking, could I just
Yeah, go
add some
ahead.
commentary? So, as you are aware, when a ballot question goes on the ballot, we have to develop pro and con
Right.
statements.
Somebody has to.
Somebody has to. I can already anticipate that the con statement is going to be a significant challenge for us to overcome. Because this raises so many questions. What are these people going to be paid? It's another level of, another senior position being created. What's the salary going to be? I just feel like we have a high probability that it is not going to get approved by the voters. And I'm usually very optimistic, but I just think if we move too quickly, we're going to end up with a no vote. And I think that's going to set us back if we truly want to achieve. I respect the chairman's position, and I was more optimistic that we'd succeed in getting this process done when we started. But things take time, and it took us a while, and we churned away, but we didn't quite get to where we are until now. So I'm just concerned that if we move too fast, push too hard, we're going to get a no vote, and then it's going to be very hard to convince the next council, the incoming mayor, whomever it is, that the task force should be reestablished again, go back, do the educational stuff that we want to do. I think if there's a no in November, that's gonna effectively dissuade any future council from taking up yet another task force initiative to achieve this. Because they're gonna feel like the voters have spoken, that the voters didn't want it. And so we're not gonna create, and that's gonna be the end of it. And I worry that by rushing too fast, with a number of outstanding questions that we're not gonna be able to appropriately educate the public on, that we're really increasing the probability that it's not gonna get approved by the voters, and then that's gonna be the end of it. Because I think, again, as I said, future councils are gonna say, the voters said no, we're not gonna entertain any further task force initiative on this matter. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, there was one other, there's basically the pros and cons, which I agree that, yes, there has to be a pro statement, there has to be a con statement, that's part of the process.
Right.
We don't determine who that is gonna be, that's determined by the Corporation Council when he draws up the ballot.
Right.
There is a, this document would have to go to every voter, that is budgeted, if you will. It's budgeted by the election office, by ordinance. Any question that's put on the ballot,
I don't think they
any
have it.
question that's put on the ballot, there needs to be a copy of the question, which would include the entire charter, has to be mailed to every voter.
Right.
So that's part of the educational process, as is whatever we do and whatever the community does to advance this topic. So, you know, I've already, as I stated, have put outreach to the local media, and certainly social media as well would pick up on this and have a significant discussion. I guess maybe a piece of my interest is we've gone this far. Just want to figure out how to kill these things. We've gone this far. This is the day. So often government is under pressure of a time frame. We are under that pressure today. If we want this to go forward, this is our day to let it go forward. This is the last item, and I'm going to go back now to the original item, which is section 10-5. I just wanted to have this input prior to our acting on 10-5. So the procedure would be to either go forward with this document now, or to make changes on this, or to do whatever the committee, and it's now just barely a quorum has, and I say barely a quorum because I think having spent almost 2 hours now on this, that we're probably close to needing to adjourn on this item. And we've still got a couple of items that have to be acted on today. So this can come back to us if, there is a very significant decision that's going to be made on Monday by the council. If they concur that this is moving too fast, that this is not where we need to go at this point, they will nix it. They will send it back, or they will table it, or they will give it leave to withdraw. There's lots of things that could happen. I feel that we've done our due diligence on this matter. We've had 8 meetings. We've prepared a document that I don't think is a 30% change in the charter. I do think it's a significant change, but I think it's a change, and I think to the appropriate astuteness, if you will, if that's a word, that we stayed focused on just this issue of mayor versus city manager. We didn't go off to discuss recall. We didn't go off to discuss whether or not elected officials who were public officials should be running. We didn't go off on any other questions. We stayed focused on this one question. I don't think it's too much for the voters to handle. I think now's the time for it to be handled. I guess part of it has to do too with my own tenure in public office, that I see this as the final big decision that I want to be involved in terms of moving this city forward. I think this does move our city forward. I would hope that we could get it to the council and let them take the next step. Mrs.
I would just interject quickly that when we started talking about mayor and deputy mayor, we did deviate.
Yeah.
And that was significant. And we've spent a good part of today's meeting just talking about mayor and deputy mayor, and so I think there was a little bit more deviation. And candidly, I know why the chair recommended it. I concur with the process that we've seen over the years regarding council presidency and that. I totally agree with the necessity. But I think we did deviate, and it just raises further, question and confusion. So again, I appreciate that, but I think we did deviate.
Well, in the absence of hearing a motion, I would move that we let this go forward, and see where the council and the mayor want to do in terms of allowing it to go forward. Or if they concur that it's too much too quick, then it won't go forward. But I think we've done our due diligence over the last 8 months, and so I'm moving that we proceed with the amendments or the corrections we made today, and the one change that we made today, that this go forward to the council.
And what are we asking the council to do then? From this committee to the council, what are we asking them to do
Well,
Monday night?
it goes to the council for the council's disposition.
So are we basically just reporting into them?
We're reporting into them with the ballot question in summary, if we so choose to present them this ballot question, which would be the next item on the agenda. Right now, we're talking about item number 4, discussion concerning the task force
Well-
charter amendment draft.
Okay,
So if we adopt this draft, then the next step would be the motion to forward proposal to the council.
So
So let's,
I have said in numerous previous meetings, or at least the last few, that I think we needed the council's input. We needed to report back in and just see what their feeling was on all of this, and based on the progress that we've made. So I don't have a problem sending it to the city council. I would not support sending it with full recommendation of its content by virtue of the dating, the timing. So if the motion is to send it to the city council for their update and recommendations back to the task force, I'm okay with that.
well, at this point,
But-
the motion would be only that we adopt the, what do we call this, the revised draft?
I'm not-
Revised draft as our final draft.
I'm not prepared to support that.
Our final draft.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to support that.
So what's your disposition?
Again,
Report to the council. This is where our thinking stands.
Okay, motion
What do you
to
think?
forward the revised draft as a revised draft to the council
for their input.
for their input.
Second.
Okay, who made that motion?
You did.
Oh, did I? Okay. Okay, good. Nice motion.
Okay, and seconded by Mr. Quinn.
I went through, I can't read this motion to forward revised draft to council for their input.
Yeah, for its input.
Its
Right.
input.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Everyone would do a roll call on that?
We don't need to do a roll call.
We'll do
Unanimous.
Roll call.
Roll.
Yeah, I want to agree on that.
Okay, Aguirre. Conrad, yes. Hetzler, Quinn,
Yes.
Sadler, Viveros,
Yes.
Camara.
Yes. Okay, and that takes care of item 4. Item 5, in a sense, we may have disposed of item 5, but you have before you an order allowing the city council to place a ballot question on the November 5th, 2019 Fall River election ballot. Board of Elections shall place on the official ballot of the Fall River election to be held on November 5th, 2019 in the city of Fall River the following question, ballot question in summary. Shall the city approve the home rule petition which amends the Fall River Charter as summarized below? The Fall River Task Force developed the home rule petition through a process that began with the adoption of a city council resolution. Be it resolved that the city council president established a special committee or task force to review suggestions and/or proposals to establish a home rule charter to create a city council, city manager form of government for the city of Fall River, adopted in city council November 27, 2018. The anticipated benefits of the proposed amendments to the charter follow: having a professional city manager serve as chief executive officer, CEO of the city of Fall River, reducing the inherent conflict and division that occurs between the mayor and the city council, reducing the inherent conflict and division that occurs within the city council and school committee, reducing the need for recall elections while establishing better community continuity to those who govern, redefining the position of mayor and establishing the position of deputy mayor to establish a leadership team directly elected by the voters. This voter-elected leadership team would serve as chair and vice chair of the school committee and as president and vice president of the city council. The school committee continues as a 7-person committee with 1 less school committee member elected at large, and the city council continues as a 9-person council with 2 less city councilors elected at large, establishing greater stability and better opportunity for voters' participation in Fall River government. Implementing this improved form of government may be implemented without increased costs while providing a more professional form of government to serve the needs of Fall River's taxpayers and ratepayers. This was prepared as a document for your consideration. What's your pleasure?
I have no motion to offer.
So do you want to move this, that it be tabled?
Table.
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 Okay. Motion made to table this item. So that means our work may continue if this passes. Motion is made by Mrs. Viveras to table and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Vote on tabling. We'll go to a roll call on tabling.
Aguirre, Conrad, yes. Hetzler, Quinn,
Yes.
Sadler, Viveras,
Yes.
Kamara.
No.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda are the minutes, July 22nd. You have a copy, did you have a chance to review those?
Motion to approve the minutes of July 22nd?
Move to adopt the minutes and approve
Second.
them as presented, made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimously voted. We have also, as item 7, we received an open meeting law complaint filed by Colin Dias regarding our July 22nd task force meeting. Particularly, it was stated that the last meeting said next steps without specifics. It was up to the council to determine what those, up to the task force to determine those next steps. It's customary for the, well, what's your pleasure on the,
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we took any definitive actions under our next steps.
no, well, let's just see what our minutes stated. Next steps, we have only a little more of the charter to go through since the committee had apparently declined to take on the ballot on the issue of the mayoral recall. If we wanted our home rule petition to be on the ballot in November, it would have to get to the city council fast. It would need to be okayed by them and the mayor and then sent to the state for a vote before it could be put on the ballot. There is only one council meeting in August on the 12th, and agenda items have to be in by close of business on the 8th. I guess maybe that should have been tentatively corrected, but Judith Conrad will be away until late afternoon on the 7th, so we will attempt to have a meeting on the 8th to get the language ready to submit to the council. So that was the essence of our next step. I would suggest that we accept, place it on file, and that we forward to Corporation Counsel for his action. Okay, would that be
So moved.
appropriate? So Mrs. Viveras made a motion to accept, place on file, and to forward a copy to Corporation Counsel for his action.
Second.
Seconded, made and seconded. I would just also want to just underscore something that I find somewhat interesting. It has been ruled at times by the Corporation Council that this is not an official legislative body. We're not an official committee. I disagree with that perspective, but nonetheless, in a sense, if we are not a legislative committee, an official government committee, we're not bound by the open meeting law. We've functioned as if we are bound by the open meeting law, because I think it's better to be safe than sorry and to err on the side of cautiousness. So we've cautiously proceeded to make sure that we do everything according to the book as to the open meeting law. So, you know, this may or may not even be an appropriate violation if in fact the Corporation Council is correct. But I think doing what we're suggesting that we do is forwarding it to him for his opinion and for his action is a good thing. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, so voted. And then finally, adjournment. Just before we do that though, I'm not going to schedule another meeting until we see where things go on Monday and beyond. So, with that having been said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, unless there's any further business.
So moved.
Move to adjourn, made by Mrs. Burr,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Quinn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted, adjourned. Thank you. And thank you for